Hello my friends, autumn is finally upon us, so I figure what better time than now to discuss German World War II ambush camo. Let's set the scene. Take yourself back to the fall of 1944. The Allies are pushing the Germans further and further back into Central Europe and Germany itself with each passing day. The Panzer Divisions are on their heels, but their greatest threat comes not from the ground, but from the air. American, British, and Canadian fighter bombers prowl the skies hunting tanks with deadly efficiency. And at this stage of the war, every operational tank is critical to the German war effort. Orders are handed down to the German factories to start employing a new camo scheme specifically designed to help these steel behemoths blend in with the colorful fall foliage of the German countryside. Much like here in the States, the deep woods of Germany develop into a brilliant blend of vibrant reds, ambers, oranges, and yellows as the weather begins to turn. In this new German camo scheme, known as Hinterhalt-Tarnung, aimed to replicate this exact symphony of fall foliage and help give the Panzers a fighting chance against Allied fighter bombers. So today, we're going to learn how to authentically recreate this iconic late war camo scheme on our own scale models. Without further ado, I'm Hank, this is Sprues and Brews Scale Modeling. Let's jump right into it. Alright my friends, so for today's demonstration, we'll be using this Tamiya Panzer IV-J, but you can accurately replicate this scheme on pretty much any late war German tank or tank destroyer variant. We're only going to need a few supplies today. Our airbrush, some airbrush cleaner or thinner to keep things running smoothly, some black primer, and our camo paints. I'm using this late war Stug set from Ammo, but all you're going to need are a few essential colors. You'll need a Dunkelgelb dark yellow, an olive grün or olive green, and a Rotbraun or a red brown. Any variation on these tones will work fine for what we're going to paint today, as long as they're historically accurate German paint colors. So to get started, as with all of our painting projects, let's hit the whole build with a coat of flat black primer to give us a nice base to work with. Once the kit is fully primed, we're going to switch over to our Dunkelgelb. Starting in 1943, German vehicles leaving the factory were all coated with at least a base camouflage of Dunkelgelb dark yellow, rather than the early war Dunkelgrau dark gray. So let's spray our whole model with some Dunkelgelb now. I'm using a very late war final variant of Dunkelgelb that's a little bit lighter and less saturated than what you're probably used to, but if you want to use the more traditional Dunkelgelb, no worries. Also, don't worry about overspraying onto the pioneering tools or the road wheels right now. We're going to clean those all up with our detail painting after all of our camo work is done. Okay, once our whole tank is painted up in Dunkelgelb, let's go ahead and get started on our secondary camo colors. First up, let's break out our olive grün. With most northern forests in the fall, you're never going to completely lose that greenery. There will always be some evergreen pines and stubborn deciduous trees that don't turn until later in the year. So our olive grün is going to give us that lush greenery. Now I've got my air compressor set at around 30 psi and I have the flow nozzle cranked down to a pretty small spray pattern. I like to start my camo stripes by drawing two lines on either side of the area I'm going to work on. So I'm sort of outlining the area that I want to fill in. And then I like to come back and model in the area until it's fully painted in our new color. Now important to note here, this Panzer IV has spaced armor around the turret, the Schürzen. We are going to paint our camo on the outer surfaces of the Schürzen, but not on the side of the turret that's covered by the Schürzen. This area isn't easily visible, so the factories or crews that were painting usually didn't add extra camo paint here, though they would be painted in the base Dunkelgelb. There's no definite rhyme or reason to this, but two things that I will point out or suggest to you. It's a good practice to get a reference image up so that you can have a little inspiration to go by while you're working. And also, try and keep your lines and your edges as soft as possible. Stark, straight lines don't appear in nature, so they don't usually create a very effective camouflage. Smooth, flowing lines are best. And while we have our olive grün out, let's paint up a few of our road wheels. Pick your poison here. You can do as many or as few as you want. We're going to come back and paint in the other wheels a different color later. Okay, so now that we've got our green camo bits down, let's move on to our second color. Our next color here is going to be Rotbraun, which is this beautiful, vibrant red-brown. Now, what I'm going to do here is try and fill this Rotbraun into the areas that I didn't paint green while leaving a small bit of Dunkelgelb visible between the two colors. When you have really stark transitions between two colors, like a direct green to a direct brown in this case, for example, Sometimes the effect can almost be jarring and more eye-catching than you'd want, which is definitely not what we want for a camouflage. So I find that leaving a little bit of buffer between our greens and our browns with the Dunkelgelb base helps make these shapes look more organic. Alright, fantastic. So now we've got all of our wrought brown shapes added in. And with many mid and late war camo schemes, this is where the cruise stopped. A lot of German armor you'll see from this period is in a basic, modeled, three-tone camo scheme like this. But today we're specifically talking about ambush camo, and what makes ambush camo special is the spots. When you're walking through the woods on a clear day, small beams of sunlight make their way through the treetop canopy and paint these delicate little speckles of light all over the low-lying brush and on the forest floor. And ambush camo strives to replicate exactly that. So our first step here, we're going to load up our airbrush once again with some of our Dunkelgelb. And we're going to crank our nozzle opening way down so only a very precise stream of paint is coming through. And then holding our brush directly perpendicular to the surface of our armor, we're going to gently tap the trigger and release a tiny spot of paint. This is very sensitive work, so go slow. And we're going to repeat this in a random pattern all over the green and brown sections of our camo. These little speckles are going to break up our larger color blocks and capture the feel of those beams of light sneaking through the treetops. Now to take that one step further, we're going to repeat that speckle process with both our green and our brown paints. Let's take out our green first. We're going to make some additional green spots on top of all of our brown sections of camo. And then we'll take our brown paint and we're going to make some additional brown spots on all of our green sections of camo. And this is going to further our natural organic camo effect. Once again, nothing in nature is one solid color. Everything is dynamic. These green and brown spots help replicate fallen leaves, intersecting branches, stones, the whole medley of the forest. And once those spots are applied, you've got yourself an authentic late war Panzer ambush camo. Now to finish up our tank, we've got to paint up some equipment, we've got to finish our tracks, and we've got to start weathering. So for some helpful tips and tricks on those steps, you can check out these next videos right here. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing right here to Sprues and Brews Scale Modeling. And until next time, my friends, be well, happy building, cheers.